We're going to talk about mill safety today. Here at Northwest State, we have all vertical mills. We have no horizontal mills. 5 of our 7 mills have what they call a track mill function on it. So you can use the mill both manually with power feed or using computerized functions. Essentially, though, the safety on all of them is the same. We're going to talk about a number of things today that you should do before you operate the machine, during, and after. This is very similar to other videos you've seen on safety. A lot of things carry over it. A lot of safety is common sense, and we're going to talk about that today. You never want to operate a mill, or any machine for that matter, unless you have proper instruction on it. You know how to work it, you know how to run it, you're very familiar with it. If you have questions, any questions at all, get with your supervisor, your instructor, and ask. Ask them before you run the machine, not after. You should never attempt to run a machine if your senses are impaired by medication or other substances that can reduce your awareness of your surroundings or your reaction time, creating an unsafe condition. One important thing to remember when you're running a mill, or any machine for that matter, is to dress appropriately. You don't want any baggy or loose-fitting clothing that could get tangled up in the cutter or the cranks or the lead screws. No jewelry. Watches and rings in particular can get caught in the cutters. A necklace, you don't want to wear those type of things. Always wear safety glasses. Safety glasses are required by our shop procedures anytime you're in the shop to have safety glasses on. No open-toed shoes or shorts when you're running machines in this shop. Another thing, if you have long hair, it needs to be secured, a hairnet or tied up in some fashion to where it can't become entangled in the machine. When you first walk up to the machine, look around, look at it, look at the floor around it, make sure there's no trip hazards, oil or chips on the floor, coolant, anything that can make you slip and fall or lose your balance and maybe put a hand into the cutter. Just common sense. A clean area, clean work area is a safe work area. Before operating the machine, you want to look and make sure all the guards are in place. On this particular machine, this would be one guard you want to look at. This covers the drive that runs the cross feed. And if it's missing or loose or open, don't run the machine. Contact your instructor and find out what's going on and what needs to be done to make the machine safe to operate. In milling, the work holding device must be fastened to the table securely. In this particular mill, we're using a vise. These 2 bolts clamp the vise to the table. The vise in turn tightens up on the workpiece. It all has to be tight, a very rigid setup. A loose or vibrating setup can break or shatter the cutter, possibly throwing chips or broken pieces of cutter, and that can be very dangerous. So make sure everything is fastened securely and clamped down tight. Whenever you're using a work holding device or a tool holder that requires a chuck key, tighten it up, put it in, never leave the chuck key in it. This is just like a lathe. When you turn the spindle on, it's going to throw the chuck key at you. Keep it in your hand after you tightened it or loosened it and put it away. There's a proper place for everything, and it is definitely not to be left in the chuck. So that's a no-no. Always take the chuck key out. Always stop the machine. Turn the spindle off. Stop the machine before cleaning, making adjustments, taking measurements. Make sure that the cutter is stopped. Using a mill by virtue makes metal chips. They're all sharp. They can be dangerous and cut your hands. Whenever cleaning chips off of the mill, use a brush. Use a shop vac. Use anything but your hands. Keep your hands clear of the chips. Compressed air can be our friend, but we never use it to clean a machine. There's a lot of uses for compressed air in a machine shop, but blowing the chips off of a machine is not one of them. You can blow them on the person working next to you. You can get them on yourself. You can get them in your eyes and your skin. Never use compressed air to clean a machine. Before removing or repositioning the workpiece, the part you're cutting, it's best to move it away from the cutter. Even though the cutter's off, you can still get lacerations or cuts to your hands by inadvertent contact with it. So it's best just to move the workpiece away. Get completely away from the cutter. Now we can measure it, we can clean it up, we can take it out, we can do whatever. The cutter's over there. We're over here. We've allowed ourselves some area of free space without chance of lacerations or cuts. One of the byproducts of machining is burrs. Burrs on the workpiece. Remove burrs. Take a file the workpiece off before you remove it, or remove it and put it in a vise. But the important thing is pay attention to them and not get cut on them until you do remove them. I tell people you have a very important thing. It can be called your best friend on these machines if you need it, and that's the emergency stop button. It's called the red button. They're on this machine on the track mills. There's one on the machine for the spindle. The spindle's running. You hit it, it cuts the power to it. The same thing for this one. If you need the feed stop, you hit the red button. It stops the controller and all the feeds. This one will not turn off the spindle. This one will. Just remember, when you walk up to the machine, know where these two buttons are on any machine. Always know where the emergency stop buttons are. On our track mills, we have a feature on here. These, as I said earlier, can be used for manual machining or power feed. Whenever they're in power feed, you need to pull this out and fold it in. As you can see, with it out, how the dial spins. That can create a very painful injury. Safety says, put it in. Fold it in, it'll stay in. That's the safe way to run the machine. It's hard to remember, but think about it. You only have to be hit by it one time, and trust me, you'll remember it for a long time. Fold the dials in when using the power feed. An important thing to remember when running a mill is never talk to anyone while you're running. If somebody comes up and wants to talk, don't do that. You're running a mill. It takes your full attention on it. Never allow anybody to fool around in the area of the mill or horseplay. This can cause accidents needlessly. If somebody comes up and you're running a mill and they're trying to help you run it, that is also a no-no. You're running the mill. You run all the controls on it. Nobody helps you. You're in control, and keep it that way.